On January 20th, 2011, PJ Turney wrote an article on Konami's blog about a new card coming out in Storm of Ragnarok, and that card is Maxx C. Throughout the article, he mentions ways Maxx C can help you deal with decks like X-Saber, Six Samurai, Fish OTK, Plants, and more. They even acknowledge the fact that your opponent would stop special summoning if you resolved Maxx C. Furthermore, on March 18, 2011, they wrote another blog post on how you can get the most out of Maxx C, so you can see what their intentions were when designing this card. However, 7 years later, on February 5, 2018, TCG decided to ban Maxx C entirely, and it made people wonder, why? Why did the TCG decide to ban Maxx C? What changed? You could argue the problems from 2011 got even worse throughout the years, so why do this? Well, that's what I want to answer in this video. Now, I understand everyone's got their opinions on Maxx C, and let me make this clear. I'm not here to change those opinions. Be honest, whatever your opinion is on Maxx C, it's probably never going to change no matter how many people say otherwise, and that's fine. I'm not trying to argue that Maxx C should stay banned, as some of you might think based on the title of this video. In fact, my bias on Maxx C will not be in this video. I'm just trying to show why the TCG banned Maxx C based on the research I did. After all, we can argue all day and long whether or not Maxx C should be banned, but at the end of it, we're not the ones who make the final decision. That's up to Konami whether you like them or not. So I'm just trying to understand their ideology, as I think I can make an argument that Maxx C is the ultimate symbol for how different OCG and TCG's ideologies are. Okay, before we get started, let me break down how this will go. Basically, I'm going to be showing 4 different aspects of Maxx C that goes against the TCG's ideologies. Some of them will correlate with the OCG, but I'm mostly going to be looking at it from the TCG's perspective, especially in the competitive landscape. And I'll be using evidence from past banlist hits and things that Konami TCG themselves have said. So, with that out of the way, let's get started, shall we? Alright, the first point I have is that both sides of Konami dislikes popular cards. The best way I can describe this is by saying that any card that's seeing high amounts of play in the meta by all decks will get hit on the ban list at some point. Cards like Book of Moon, Bottomless, Compulse, MST, Pankratops, Cyber Dragon, and more have all been hit because of this reason. In fact, OCG has done this more with cards like Pot of Prosperity, Kashtira Fenrir, and even Ash Blossom for the same reason that they're too popular. And while the TCG does this too, what's different is that they'll hit popular cards that grant too much advantage. The reason I say this is because I feel like some people might respond to my point by saying this. If they hate popular cards, then why don't they hit Nibiru, Imperm, Droplet, and more? The reason why is that those cards don't provide much advantage compared to the other cards I'll be talking about. To understand this, cards that everyone will play, but can also give an overwhelming advantage at the same time, will have a target on its back by the TCG. Cards like Cold by the Grave, Appointer of the Red Lotus, Soul Charge, Solemn Judgment, and more are all popular cards that have ended up on the ban list, with one of the main reasons being that they grant too much advantage. Now hold on, why is Solemn Judgment on here, you ask? Well, to give some context, back in 2009, Solemn Judgment got limited and people in Pojo were wondering why. Well, Kevin Tewart, the former head of Konami R&D, believed that Judgment was broken, even though everyone else thought it was a skillful card, since using it at the wrong time could possibly lead to you getting OTK'd. However, Tewart did not agree with this. He believed Solemn Judgment was broken because it can negate anything, and because of the card's high rise in usage during the Zexal era, on September 2013 when the ban list split, Tewart took his first opportunity and banned Solemn Judgment, which falls in line with my point about TCG hitting popular cards that they think grants too much advantage. To back this up even more, cards that have drawbacks to them like Psyframe Gear Gamma and Brilliant Fusion have ended up on the ban list even though they have some pretty harsh downsides, with the main reason being again is that they provide too much card advantage. In Gamma's case, when Excel Stardust came out, it made Gamma better to resolve turn 1, as now you can get a Baronne if you negated a hand trap from your opponent. I think that reason made TCG believe that the downsides of Gamma did not matter anymore, leading them to limit Gamma on the May 2023 ban list. As for Brilliant Fusion, it got hit because it can provide 2 monsters and an extra normal summon, which can be a lot for one card, with the only downside being a Garnet. Same as Gamma, I believe that the TCG thought this was too much for one card to do, and with Master Rule 5 coming up, they probably decided it was best to remove Brilliant Fusion from the game. The reason why Maxx C fits in with this point is because it does the same things as the cards I mentioned before, a card that will always see play in every deck, and the amount of advantage it provides is too much for one card to do. In fact, this logic connects with the next point I have about the card. My second point is TCG dislikes one cards that grant too much advantage, and I know this sounds similar to my first point, I didn't know how else to word it, but this one focuses more on cards that literally give you too much advantage despite not every deck in the format playing it. Cards like Reasoning, Monster Gate, and Grass have all ended up on the ban list due to them being able to provide too much advantage. People have found ways to get a plus 20 out of these cards, and I believe that the TCG does not like having these cards in the meta, as getting a plus 20 can give a huge upper hand to the user, whether it's through the grind game, unbreakable boards, and possibly FTKs. Meanwhile, in the OCG, these cards are all at higher numbers, which shows one of the differences between OCG and TCG. I also want to add to this point by saying that it's not just cards that can mill 20 as Grass can, but also these one card combos have been treated the same way, especially those where you can do it every turn, and any card that have seen high amounts of play in the meta have ended up on the ban list. Cards like Prank Kids Meow Moo, Super Heavy Samurai Scarecrow, and most recently Maxx Circular have all ended up on the ban list because they provide too much advantage, whether it's through their existence like Meow Moo or Scarecrow, or their effects allow their decks to do too much like Circular did for Maxx. So these hits show how the TCG dislikes any card that can grant too much card advantage, even if the card is not popular amongst all decks. They might do too much in the metagame, which causes them to get a target on their back for a future banlist hit. And since we covered these two aspects of Maxx C, there is a third aspect of it I've yet to mention. And that's my third point. TCG dislikes the abuse of draw cards, which I know sounds counterintuitive because Upstart Goblin went to 3 on our recent ban list, but when you think about it, over the years they've hit a lot more draw cards than the OCG has. Into the Void, Chicken Game, Paw Desires, and Upstart Goblin have all spent some time on the ban list, whether limited or banned today. There are a few that have come back like Upstart and Desires, but they did spend a fair amount of time on the FNL list. Furthermore, draw cards that have harsh downsides to them have also been hit, especially if players find ways to work around those downsides, like they did with Card Demise and Sekka's Light. So why do they do this, you ask? Well, I believe there's two reasons. One is obvious. If you've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for so long, you would know that draw cards in this game are the most broken cards ever. Since we don't have a resource system or limit on how many cards you can play, being able to draw multiple cards can easily give you a huge advantage, especially in modern Yu-Gi-Oh where you can get more extenders, board breakers, hand traps, or anything to advance your game state. And that type of effect over the years since DM has always been restricted in some way, shape, or form. However, cards like Chicken Game, Upstart, and Into the Void don't have this restriction, which leads to them getting hit by the TCG. As for the second reason, my personal theory is that TCG dislikes how draw cards can cheat the deck size limit. What do I mean by this? Well, because the minimum deck size is 40, a draw card can be like a cheat code since you're digging deeper into your deck, and in a way, it feels like you're actually playing a 37 card deck or lower depending on how many draw cards you put in. You see, back in Arc V when cards like Chicken Game and Upstart Goblin were seeing high amounts of play in tournaments, TCG decided to hit them not just for their popularity, but for how they allowed players to dig deeper into their decks. And this ideology, in my opinion, led to other draw cards getting hit, including Maxx C. Cause in most cases, you're drawing at least one card off of it the moment your opponent tries to special summon. As for the OCG, yeah, they do hit draw cards sometimes, but they're not as harsh as the TCG, and they tend to have more draw power than we do. That's not to say we don't have a lot of draw power, but at certain points, TCG might hit a draw card when they deem it's ready. Who knows, maybe one day talents might get limited. Okay, now we have covered 3 aspects of Maxx C that are different between both the OCG and TCG. But this last one was the final nail in the coffin for Maxx C, and that's TCG's philosophy on going second cards. In my opinion, this is the philosophy that has gone through the biggest change over Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Like I talked about in the beginning of the video, does it feel weird that the TCG banned Maxx C, considering the fact that they created this card, knew what it was going to do, and fulfilled that purpose? Well, yeah, it kinda does feel weird. Every card in Yu-Gi-Oh was designed for the moment they came out, and in Maxx C's case, it was designed to beat combo decks like Samurai and X-Saber, And to be fair, combo decks like those two will always be around as Konami's not going to stop making them. So then why ban the best way to counter them? I think the main reason is that TCG realized Maxx C itself has no balance factor in it. What do I mean by balance factor? Well, when you resolve Maxx C, you just get to draw cards based on how many times your opponent special summons. And as we explained before, drawing cards can be broken, especially in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So it begs the question, what makes Maxx C itself balanced? Does it have a cost other than discarding itself? Does it have a limit on how many cards you can draw? What does Maxx C itself have that makes it balanced? I know some people bring up the we have counters like Ash and Cold Buy, but counters in most cases don't justify a card itself being healthy. Plus, it's not like TCG thought of the long term of Yu-Gi-Oh! When designing Maxx C. I highly doubt they foresaw how powerful it would become, and to be fair, when Maxx C did come out, no one really played it at the time, which would explain its poor rating on Pojo's Card of the Day during the time it was first released. Anyways, what I'm trying to say here is that at some point, TCG had a change in ideology on how a going second card should act in Yu-Gi-Oh! They are aware of how oppressive combo decks can be, but having a card that grants the user who resolves it all the advantage was pretty unfair to them, which is why moving forward, every going second card they made had some balance factor in it. You have cards like No Material, Dark Ruler No More, Nibiru, and yes, Dimension Shifter, are all examples of going second cards that have a balance factor to them. Each card is designed in a way where both players go neutral when resolving it, meaning that one person isn't going to get all the advantage when using these cards. Here, let's use Nibiru as an example. You're still able to special summon when going first, but once you go over that threshold of 5, your opponent can punish you for overextending. Furthermore, you're not left defenseless as Nibiru does give you a token to defend yourself with. Maxx C, on the other hand, punishes you the moment you try to special summon, causing the whole Maxx C situation, and it's not like you get anything out of Maxx C, you're just left in a spot where you either end your turn or give your opponent a ton of cards, something that these other going second cards don't do. Now, I know people will bring up Dimension Shifter, but you have to dedicate an entire strategy to abusing going second cards like him. But with Maxx C, you don't have to dedicate anything, you just have to have it resolve and see what happens. Even the OCG shares this ideology to an extent. Cards like Droplet and Ultimate Slayer are designed with a balance factor in mind. However, when it comes to Maxx C, I can't think of a definitive answer for why they keep it. My best guess is that they're willing to have it around as it's a one-of-a-kind card, which is the best at beating combo decks. What I mean is, unless there's another card that can beat combo decks just as well as Maxx C can, then the OCG won't have a reason to ban it since no other card can perform like it, due to how the format is always changing and almost all hand traps come in and out. Maxx C is the only one that 99% of the time stays relevant. That's just my theory, I could be wrong, plus there are other factors like playstyles, but we'll never really know since we don't fully understand OCG's philosophy. As for the TCG, this point is also backed up by the fact that they banned another card that goes against this ideology, and this card does the same thing as Maxx C, but for a different type of deck, and that card is Red Reboot. You see, this card is a control deck version of Maxx C, where it punishes them for doing their main playstyle, aka punishes them for using trap cards. Because you can always pay half your life points, you get to negate your opponent's card, lock them out of traps entirely without any sort of downside for yourself, and in most cases, you're probably going to OTK or break their board. I mean, that's what Revolver did in the anime when he used this card against Emma.
そしてトラップカードの発動と効果を無効にしてセットした状態に戻すさらにお前のデッキにトラップカードがあるならそれを伏せることもできるもっともこのターンレッドリブートの効果によりお前はさらに除外されたお前のカード1枚につき500ダメージを与えるマイグレーションフォースバトルだトポロジックトゥリスバイナで
This goes to show that TCG heavily dislikes any going second card that doesn't have a balance factor in it. I know some people will say things like Super Poly's broken, Droll and Shifter are ban-worthy, all sorts of things, but I think the main difference is that cards like them are format dependent, as you don't see them all the time, unlike with Maxx C and Red Reboot. They will always see play no matter what, because there will always be decks that will rely on the strategies they can stop. They just provide too much advantages without any sort of drawback, so it would never hurt running them in your deck or side deck. I think that's what ultimately led to the banning of Maxx C. Well, I think we covered all 4 aspects of Maxx C that goes against the TCG's ideologies. Before I end this, I just want to reiterate, I'm not trying to justify the banning of Maxx C, change anyone's opinions on it, or put my own bias on this discussion. I just want to show how this card is the ultimate symbolism between the TCG and OCG's ideologies, as well as why the TCG won't bring back Maxx C despite all the chaotic formats we had. I could be wrong, but it feels like that's how things will be for the foreseeable future. As I said before, we can discuss all day whether Maxx C should be legal or not. Both sides do have valid points, but we're not the ones who decide the ban list. That's up to Konami, and I just wanted to show their philosophy on the competitive side of Yu-Gi-Oh! Anyways, that's the end of my video. I hope you all liked this. I've been working on this for a long time, and hopefully you found this entertaining and informing. That's all I have to say about this topic. I hope you leave a like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.